In the Rila mountains of Bulgaria lies the nation's spiritual heart, a monastery built in a spot because of a gentle, miracle-working monk over 1,000 years ago. The nation of Bulgaria and the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, as well as Bulgarians around the world, have as their patron saint a local. His name is John, and he was born in the 10th century. His memory is celebrated every single year. The monastery built in his honor in the center of Bulgaria is a World Heritage listed location into which thousands of pilgrims pour from around the world annually. And there is a church dedicated to Saint John of Rila in Antarctica, one of only 8 churches on the entire continent. Over a millennium after his death, he remains one of the most loved saints of Bulgaria. He started his life in a devout Christian family, and as a young man left behind his job as a cowherder and joined a monastery. After several years in the monastery, he left that behind to become an ascetic and a hermit in the wilderness of Rila in Bulgaria, and we have an account in his own words of what it was like to arrive there. "I found no man over here, but only wild animals and impenetrable thickets. I settled alone in it among the wild animals without food nor shelter, but the sky was my shelter, and the earth my bed, and the herbs my food. But the good Lord, for the love of whom I disregarded everything, did not abandon me, but like a merciful and child-loving father, he lavishly satisfied all my needs." There in the land around John where he settled, in a place in which only wild grasses grew, and very little of that, there grew chickpeas. He had become a farmer without having planted anything. There weren't many, but they were enough to live off. John lived in this wilderness for several years without seeing another human being. One day he encountered a flock of sheep that ran to him. They had been lost in the wilderness and felt a peace in this hermit of the mountains, and they all encircled him and lay down to rest. Soon the shepherds arrived. They were searching for their sheep, and they found them there gathered around a monastic that they had never heard of. He invited them to sit down with him for a meal and served them the chickpeas that were growing around him. There he talked to them, gave them some of his wisdom and advice on prayer, and said goodbye as they left with their sheep. One of the shepherds, though, had decided to take with him a little extra snacks for the way home, and he had secretly taken a bunch of heads of the chickpeas in his bags with him. And as they're going down the mountain, he opens them up and says, "Look guys, I've got a bit more food." And when they open up the pods, all of the chickpeas that he had taken were empty. And sensing something of the miraculous about this, they said, "We probably should go and apologize to the holy man in the mountain." And they returned and said to him, "We're really sorry, Father, we took these and we shouldn't have." John of Rila's response was amusement at the event that had happened, but instant forgiveness, informing them that God, by his good grace, had allowed these chickpeas to grow in the wilderness, to be eaten in the wilderness. And so it was that John's presence in the wilderness of Rila became known beyond it, as the shepherds went back with the story of the miracle-working monk with the chickpeas growing around him. And so people started going into the wilderness to try and find him, to get wisdom from him, prayers, healing, and he worked many miracles on the different pilgrims that came to find him. Eventually, his name reached the ears of the ruler of Bulgaria, Tsar Peter I, who decided to travel hundreds and hundreds of kilometers to go and meet this hermit face to face. Ahead of him, he sent 9 hunters that he knew and trusted to try and find the spot where John was living. These hunters got hopelessly lost in the wilderness of Rila, and after several days struggling either to find the monk or the way home or even something to eat, they just walked in on a clearing where he was sitting waiting for them. He asked them to sit down and said he would give them something to eat, and he went and brought a small tiny loaf of bread that he had been given. He broke this up amongst them and asked them why they had come, and they told him of Tsar Peter's request to meet him. And John did not feel that it was right to meet the Tsar. He felt perhaps that there was a danger of pride coming to him and danger of attention coming to him, but he seems to have also understood that this was not the best thing for the Tsar's spirituality, that there was more benefit for the Tsar not to meet John in person. And he told them, "Sorry, but I will not meet with the Tsar." And all of the men left him with the sudden realization that while they had all eaten their fill of the tiny loaf of bread, when they looked back at the table, there was still a little bit of bread left. John and Peter the Tsar never met face to face. The closest they ever came was to see each other as small figures on distant hilltops. John was able to see the pavilion in which the Tsar was staying, and the Tsar was able to see the fire that John had built with the smoke billowing up from it as a sign that he was there and praying for him. And across the distance of the valley, it is said that the two men bowed in respect to each other. Tsar Peter sent John a letter in which he said to him, "I now bow before you and beg you to send me a comforting message that might alleviate my burning sorrow. For you know the worldly storms and mutinous clouds that trouble the hearts of kings." In response to Peter's heartfelt letter, John of Rila sent him a longer letter back in which he gave him advice of things to look out for in his spiritual life and in ruling the kingdom of Bulgaria. And in this letter he said to him, "Let your thoughts be unceasingly centered upon longing for the heavenly kingdom." Tsar Peter took this letter to heart and kept this letter on him for the rest of his life, reading it often, and Tsar Peter I is remembered in Bulgaria as Saint Peter the Tsar. John of Rila's influence on the people of Bulgaria and on the rulers of Bulgaria and the nation continued even beyond his death, because before he died, he left them a letter of wisdom on how to pursue spirituality, on how to grow closer to God. And John of Rila ends his letter by saying, "I had much more to say to you, my beloved children in the Lord, but it is impossible to write everything. I deliver you to him who is the source of all wisdom and reason and the true comforter, to the Holy and life-giving Spirit, in order that he himself gives you wisdom, to bring you to your senses, to enlighten you, to teach and instruct you in every good deed." We are accompanying this episode with a cup of mountain tea. Sometimes it is called shepherd's tea. It's very nice and soothing. It was a pleasure to talk to you about Saint John of Rila. He is a saint that I have only recently come to know, and I really enjoyed the acquaintance. I feel like I've learnt a lot from him and from his life story.